Hello and welcome to Weekly Open. My name's Brian. Everybody on the show today, we got Luke, Cred, and Don. What is my name?
You've got so many alt accounts, right? You've got so many alt accounts on Twitter and so many different personalities. You were like, I am. Wait, who am I today? What show is this?
Weekly Open is brought to you by FTX. Go to weeklyopen.com/FTX, where you can trade today. Trade free from one asset to the other with zero fees. Track your portfolios you've always known and loved. You can even earn a little bit of yield on your tokens. Do it all on FTX, weeklyopen.com/FTX. Thanks for them being a partner of the Weekly Open podcast. Luke, you're on the far left. How you
doing? Well, Cred, Don, hope you guys are doing all right. Who the hell's Brian? I've been gone a couple weeks. What the hell's going on here?
Just some guy. Cred, how's it going?
Yeah, good. I mean, I just heard that Luke was on the far left, so I don't know how I feel about his political affiliation. I'll try to work through it and be professional throughout this episode. But yeah, pretty good. I seem to be one of the only panelists who's not on some permanent holiday. Maybe I'll get there one day. Give me a couple more market cycles, and I'll be there. But yeah, nice. Good to be at my desk and watching stuff that that isn't happening.
Watching stuff that isn't happening. Don, how you doing?
Very, very good. How are you?
I'm excellent. I got a little bit of a team meetup thing going on this week, so out of pocket from my normal station, and I brought better backup tools and of course forgot a key and critical piece to actually achieve what I needed to achieve with them. So here we are, but I think it'll work. It's one of those like studio things, so it should be fine. So last week we kind of this sharing grievances and stuff. I think what maybe we'll do is see if anybody has an optional grievance. Otherwise, for the week where I at least am rekt, and then we can revert mostly to the normal format. But if any of you guys have prepared a grievance of the week that you want to share, I would love to hear it.
People are going to wait for me immediately just because of my personality, but honestly, it's been quite reasonable the past week, both on Twitter and off Twitter, although obviously on Twitter is the only one that matters. I don't have anything particularly.
Twitter being reasonable is almost a grievance in itself. Twitter's supposed to be depressing in a bear market, Cred. I called you bread.
Bread, yes. Bread is well. Bread, Cred. Just put any letter in front of R-E-D and you'll be fine.
I'm on my first cup of coffee, so...
Understandable. No, I mean it's been okay. Things haven't been going down, and you've had a bit of volatility, and some altcoins, more importantly, I guess, for most market participants, moving up as well. So that's made things easier, and the timeline hasn't been as much chaos as before. So that's good news.
I have a market-centric grievance, which is not anyone's particular take or anything, but my grievance is that I am highly dissatisfied with gold bulls. Like 10 years to figure this out, to wait for this opportunity for a breakout, and for the second time in the last year when they actually have this chance to go into price exploration, they fail to do so, and I'm highly disappointed in them. So that's my primary grievance, and it's reflected by my positioning.
I mean, isn't that the point of gold? Like, you invest if you want to be disappointed. I always thought yeah.
It seems like the Zcash, of traditional markets to some extent, where you have like some understanding of scenarios under which the fundamentals should do well, and you get enough of a taste at certain points where you're like, oh, this is the one, and then you get zoddled by Gainsey, and then it's back to business as usual. I feel like most people hold gold because they feel they need to hold gold to be sophisticated or proper or in line with some portfolio theory. Certainly the kind of Zoomer generation, millennial, whatever, in which I include myself conveniently, I don't really have an interest in precious metals and gold stuff. I prefer sound digital money, which only goes down 80% every few years, like clockwork. So it's clearly a better investment.
I was actually on the Bankless podcast last week, not to brag.
We watched it. Don't worry.
Okay. But one of Ryan's thing was like, why bother buying stocks? If I need to risk off, I'll just own cash. And if I want risk, I have plenty of risk in crypto. And to be honest, he had a point. Like, and it's to yours as well, Cred. Like, it's not terribly different price action, right? But you get more volatility on the crypto side of things. So he actually made me think with that comment.
Yeah, and then you go, why buy crypto if you can buy NFTs? And if I want to risk off, I'll move into Luna or something. Just keep making up more extreme versions of the same argument. But no, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess there's the liquidity profile to that as well, though. But NFTs struggle. So Don, do you want to give us kind of a layout of the market? What are we looking at?
Sure. I mean, high time frame wise, nothing's changed. I mean, that's gonna be pretty much what I'm gonna say throughout pretty much every single time frame. But high time frame wise, we still like running into monthly support every single month, which isn't necessarily the worst thing. It's just not really good, like testing the support too many times. So
Don's the only person who can make that sound bad ever, right? Like any other expression, you're running into monthly support. It makes it sound like it's like an ex-girlfriend or something. It's like, oh, we're running into support every month. Like, come on, man, give me a break.
I mean, I'm not bearish into monthly support. I'm just saying we've tested it 3 times now. 3 months, 3 tests, not the best kind of setup. It's not the worst either. Like if you're shorting into that, I mean, God help you. It's really a really shit trade. In like if you just compare it to like how previous instances have played out, like last real significant one was basically the 10K retest and we went to 60K after. Before that we had the 6K retest and we went to 10K and then to 60K. So like historically speaking, like if you're bearish into this monthly support, you're doing something wrong. But then again, like what we've been basically doing is we've just been testing it over and over and over again, which at some point, if that continues, we're going to fall through it. So you want to hope that this low actually holds. And I mean, we've had the same picture on the weekly time frame, actually. If you look at this.
Are you going to give this giant green candle that all of us hopiumed on all week, like no love whatsoever?
I'm getting to it. Don't worry.
Okay. Just making sure.
I mean, it's a tiny candle for Bitcoin, really, and it's not as significant as people make it out to be. But
means nothing.
It is at least something. It does mean something. It means that like at least we're out of this kind of grind zone, because this was starting to look really bad, right? You don't want to sit into like in a support for like 5-6 weeks. At some point, there's a good chance that it actually drops out. So it's nice that we moved off of it for the time being. And it's also nice that we actually broke 38K to the upside. So for me, this is actually like the first time that we've seen some semblance of like a bull argument, because before we really hadn't had one. And that actually reflects itself on the daily as well, where I think as long as we're holding above 40K, which is the previous low, like we had, we set the lows in the 30K region, had like a leg up, and then the first retrace of that leg up, that was the bottom at like 40K before moving to make a new high, right? And that's kind of where we are right now. And I think as long as we hold that, it's not necessarily too bad looking. It's still a little bit rough and it's still super choppy. But if this kind of like, if we close today above 40K and then start moving up again, maybe break 42K again, I think there's a good chance that we're actually gonna just straight up head higher. And we've retested 44K a bunch of times already. So like at some point you would expect that to break. And then there's like pretty much a free path towards like 50K, I think. But we do have to hold 40K. I think if we start losing 40K here again, like let's say tomorrow we just start closing above 40K and then start moving into this ugly trend line again, the picture changes rapidly into one that is very bearish to me, because this support has also been tested a shitload of times, right? This trend line support. And if that goes, you basically just get like a domino effect where the weekly goes and then the daily goes and everything goes. And then we just fuck off and go like very low, in my opinion. So this is like, you can make a bullish bet here, and I think it's not a bad kind of bet to take, but you want to have 40K hold, which is really nice because that's like a relative easy invalidation. There's a chance that you just get chopped and it just goes sideways again, but it's somewhat of a trade setup, the first one that I've had in a long time, besides just randomly buying like a shitty trend line and hoping it holds, which, I mean, it did hold, but it's not the best kind of setup. So for me, there is a setup to be taken if you want it, which is basically praying to God that 40K holds and then betting that the upside is like 50K. Other than that, I don't really see too much.
Don is
Nothing
just
to
so
really
garbage
change.
at compliments and saying nice things. Like, I would hate to be his friend in real life or something. It's like under normal circumstances, you'd be like, "Oh, she's a good-looking girl. What do you think, Don?" He's like, "She's not the ugliest girl in the world." It's like, come on, man, I can give you something to work with here. It's like, I don't know. It's like pulling someone's fingernails out.
Yeah, I mean,
this is not the most bearish. He's like Max Long, his net worth. Like, this isn't the most bearish thing I've ever seen. It's like, we get it, man.
I mean,
okay.
the thing is,
say nice things.
The thing is that the reason why I frame it like this, right? And I mean, we kind of tend to forget like the larger picture, but this is a massive downtrend, right? And this is the first consolidation that we've had on the way down. So like the reasonable bet would be that you think it actually goes down, in my opinion. It's just with that in mind and just kind of looking at this, I want to be bullish. It's just really, really tough. But I think there's a setup. So like that is kind of why I'm framing it the way I am, because the reasonable thing would be expecting downside. I'm not like, I'm leaning more to the upside than to the downside right now, but I don't have
when these levels when these levels are around round numbers, when you can talk easily 40K, 50K, does that give you a little added confidence in a setup, or does it not matter to you?
I like it. Like these round numbers usually matter, at least a little bit. Like they tend to hold better, both like to the down and to the upside, obviously. So like 40K support, it's gonna be better than 39K support.
Yeah, I just don't like it if it's like, well, if 37.5 doesn't hold, then it's done.
Lights out, bro.
Lights out.
I totally agree. Yeah, so it's
I
nice.
feel like
it's
only traders are looking at that.
Yeah, I mean it's psychological as well, right? Like 40K looks so much better than 39.99.9. Yeah.
Yeah, you also just tend to get like order clustering around round numbers. And yeah, easier to generate trade ideas. And also the whole meme where people, this sounds absurd, but they'll read analysis which says, oh, 40K is the important level for BTC, and they'll leverage long and put a stop at 39.9K. And that's why you tend to see a bit of a like reaction around these big round numbers, not just from the order clustering, but also simply as a result of really bad traders getting stopped out when round numbers break. It's works both ways of traders wanting to do business there, but also freaks choosing to get stopped out like $1 above or $1 below.
I'd like to spend a little bit of time on Ethereum in a bit and some of the fundamental stuff around Ethereum. But Luke, one of your things that you pay a lot of attention to, and I'd love to hear your take on, is the Sol Luna AVAX trade seems to have something going on. And I'm curious what your thoughts are.
For the current moment, sticking with Don's chart for a second on that Bitcoin look, I'm kind of biased as well. I also think that we move up from here, even if the setup is like kind of buy and pray that blue line holds. Even in that event where like Bitcoin does start cruising up, we get up to 43, 44, that resistance we've tested 3 or 4 times. I don't know. Like I was more excited about the Sol Luna AVAX wave like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think that sure, AVAX is great narrative. Luna has a great narrative. I think that like some of the narratives are starting to develop, but ETH for the first time in a long time also has a really strong narrative with the merge coming up. So it's like, in the past you'd have to kind of take that risk with Sol Luna AVAX because ETH wasn't really moving. I think now in the scenario where Bitcoin starts to move up, I think sure maybe Luna and AVAX look good, but I think ETH is also going to look pretty good. So I don't know. I'm a little torn. What are your guys' thoughts there on Cred? I know you kind of disagreed a little bit ago about layer ones and whether or not that trade's going to keep working this year. What have you seen?
Yeah, I quite like that take. The argument you made essentially that it's almost back to basics, right?
Yeah.
Where Bitcoin does well, and then you get an ETH BTC pop with a nice little narrative. Back in the day, this is just like a year ago, it was like EIP 1559, right? Which like no one understood, but and thought it was going to start being priced in after the market had moved up like 10,000%. That was a fun time. But Yeah, I'm quite sympathetic to that. Just for me, it's even just stating Sol Luna AVAX, like the basket itself has become so divergent with a lot of relative strength and weakness within it. It just seems a bit less coherent as a brainless basket of altcoins trade. I think like narrative stuff is like, Bitcoin, ETH. I mean, Luna, because of all the, publicity and UST and its Bitcoin reserve purchases and all this other stuff. I'd rather, if I'm going to chase those to some extent, go for novelty and recency and the fresh stuff rather than hoping that 2022 mid to late 2021 makes a comeback. I agree with there, but it's probably still fine, as you mentioned, just by virtue of correlations. If stuff tends to creep up, it'll all probably do that. You just want to obviously be riding the fastest horse in that case, so I agree with you there.
I don't like Sol, Luna, AVAX all lumped together personally. Like I just can't do Luna because it's basically I know.
Go on, give us your mid fundamental fund.
Bring on the Duquan bet. Add me down for $10 to the 22 million. I can't buy someone else's like 30-something thousand% gain, and it just structurally means nothing to me. Like it could go down back and make a higher low that's minus 50% from here or something and still be totally fine for all those long-term holders. And it's just less of a setup. So of the options, my personal bets would probably be on the like Solana AVAX side of things to kind of press on the mean reversion, or in Solana's case, or on the like longer term consolidation in AVAX's case. AVAX also has their conference thing this week, so I know that somebody not too long ago was talking about well, they turn the volumizer on or something to make sure it's not red
allegedly
going into it. Allegedly. It certainly looked like it, like there was just a bid on AVAX. But anyway, so I prefer different options. That chart looks pretty bad, all said. But Solana is actually the one that I've been going after. I've really been trying to kind of snipe this potential mean reversion that exists on Solana. But maybe that's just my
last words.
Well, it already
trending down.
It already cut me once, but I'm in a decent position this time, so I'm sure I'll get wrecked sometime this week while I'm not able to pay full attention.
What are you looking for?
But yeah,
like 70 to 130, 120, something like that.
Yeah, 125 or so.
Yeah,
125 or so is my best place. And then aggressive would be kind of back to the even 150 realm. But if I manage my downside pretty tightly, or like average in on low time frames, and then I can try to cut it if it starts to get close to my, I'm not going to take another 10% loss, but I've got a little bit of buffer in there to, if I lose 1 or 2 or 3%, that's not too big of a deal for the relative upside that's pretty high. So I obviously see these levels that Don is really enjoying saying I get liquidated at, but I would never hold to there. You know what I mean? Like Don buys. I will be, so Don, that's a different trade to me, right? Like I'm just looking at some short-term swing setup. I don't even have want my collateral in it, I think long-term though, those will be kind of generational buys if the market continues to trend down. Like Solana has its potential Ethereum moment, and you're buying people's absolute capitulation, 95% down, it's $20 again, and then off you go. I would potentially seek buy Solana and hold it for a very long time if that happened, but I'm looking for a more near-term trade.
So it's Ledger versus the Samani sell program in the order books over the next week or so.
That's exactly right. Samani sell program.
Ledger, what's crazy about Solana is how, like, if you look at AVAX and Luna and Solana now converging right all on this $90 number, Luna and AVAX never got that high. They got to 140. Solana was up at 300. Like, it's wild how much of that lead it gave up to now all these be in line. It's crazy, man. And people forget
it really is. And maybe there's fundamentals in there that people are getting upset about, but I think most of it is honestly the token unlocks hitting and people willing to kind of sell into that. So maybe it'll continue to be an underperformer, and I'll be disappointed about my desire to take this trade. But that's nevertheless, I want to share the trade that I'm in with you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I mean, I honestly, the stuff that launched on Solana is just a big problem, I think.
Yeah.
Where you had a bunch of people just make a shitload of money and retail just got absolutely rinsed. And now, like, the people that are like Solana fans are all burned. And I think that's why the narrative changed so quickly from, okay, this is so good to like, okay, it's kind of garbage, just based on the fact that like the users or like the people that wanted to invest and kind of take on risk in the ecosystem just got burned so heavily.
Yeah. Don, I think that's important. I think that almost became a meme on Twitter of if a new project launches, everyone just says, what's the fully diluted value? This thing's launching at like, 10 billion off the bat. And so people just have this idea, if it's a new project in Solana, it's like, well, I'm just going to get crushed on this. And so, yeah.
Oxy is supposed to make you high, but it went down 90% instead, which is confusing.
And Cred, to your point, my trade is very mid-wit, and it's not even the most mid-wit trade I've made in the last week, so I'll share that one later. But first, I do think we should cover this. Ethereum, does it have the narrative of the merge? What should we be considering there? Don, if you want to pull up ETH, and ETH BTC's got a little bit of action lately. And
yes.
Do y'all think that the ETH merge narrative is real? Should we be on the lookout?
Oh, Don, did you draw that before the stream, right? Just to look cool?
Nope, I actually threw that last stream.
Right.
Or like, actually, I don't even know
it was
when
like 2 weeks ago.
Like, this has to, it has to.
It was.
Like two,
it was on
weeks
this.
ago.
It was on this show, I believe.
Oh shit! I'm so good.
You obviously traded it, right? Like,
yeah.
No,
this thing I did not
trade any of it. But yeah, I mean, there's like chart wise is at least like putting in some sort of bottom-ish. We talked about this like 2 weeks ago or so, where it's starting to like try to form a bottom, and it's actually pushing above the trend line right now, which, I mean, trend lines are memes and stuff, but this is like the first sign that we actually could see the end of like the downtrend, because this has been pretty bad on the way down, right? It's just been constant selling. And this is the first time that we've actually seen some semblance of, okay, this could actually be bottoming, like at least a little bit of hope. And I think this might actually be enough. So if we start closing off the trend line, you obviously have like a resistance at 0.0777 coming up. But if that goes, I don't really see a reason why 0.086 would hold again. And then you have a really nice narrative to go and go higher. So I'm not as bearish on ETH as I've been the last few months, basically. I actually think if we start closing above the trend line, there's a play to be made there, which is basically just hope that the low's in, or like have a stop loss at the low, basically, and then play for higher on the ETH BTC pair, which no one is going to trade anyway, right? So we should probably look at the ETH USD pair. But like my
like it's failed breakdown season, eh? Bitcoin trend line, the one you drew, Duck.
Yeah,
went below it, back up, and decent move since then. Maybe something similar brewing for ETH BTC. The diagonal fake out season, you know.
Which I mean, it's nice, right?
Season.
Yeah,
in this direction at least.
Yeah.
Actually,
this is just such a hard
distinction to make.
Yeah, it's such a hard pair to trade individually.
Yes.
On ETH BTC, but the strength on the dollar pair, like just days up, we're seeing Bitcoin 1.5%, 2%, and on those days ETH is 4% or whatever. It just seems like there's a tolerance for people to risk on the ETH side. Like it's almost like the step up program in risk, you know, like, okay, I'll do something a little more than BTC. So I'll buy Ethereum, and it's and maybe that risk will carry down a bit if we continue to see strength across the market, but it's certainly showing up on Ethereum right now. Do we know when the merge actually is?
Ledger, I was going to ask you that because you were hanging out with the bankless guys. I'm sure they know. Did they not tell you?
Man, I don't know. August maybe. Don, what were you gonna say about There's a World?
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when the merge is gonna be, but I think there's a world in which if Bitcoin goes up, you just bet on ETH. I think it's actually a reasonable kind of play. Like if you expect Bitcoin to go up, bet on ETH just based on the merge meme. So you basically just bet on that narrative running away. And I mean, if Bitcoin goes down significantly, I think there's a good chance that ETH goes down with it. So it's just gonna be the play. Okay, if you're bullish Bitcoin, maybe buy ETH instead. And if you're bearish Bitcoin, I mean, you can be bearish Bitcoin. That's kind of like, I think that's reasonable.
Liam in the chat says it's better that we don't know the date because it's harder to dump at the end of the narrative. But if the narrative is building without a firm date, then that's pretty strong, right?
The perpetual opium fundamentals.
I'm a little surprised by how soon it is. Apparently, somewhat trustworthy sources are saying it's supposed to happen in June.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Don, but what's the TA thing? Is it just like big box make price go down, or what are we looking at?
No, I mean the thing is, like, we got rejected, right? Like this chart looked as bad as it could for a long time, right? So the moment we started losing 4K, it looked really, really shitty. Failed breakout. We saw that before on Bitcoin. Bitcoin went down a shitload. ETH did basically the same thing, and then it broke down completely and retested 3K. And got rejected there. And if it was really, really bearish, it would have just gone and made new lows off of that, right? Hasn't done so far. What we've basically been doing is we've been ranging after that retest. And I think that, like, if you're really, really conservative, you could wait until we kind of smash through resistance and then just long from there. And I mean, the space isn't too big from 3.3K to 4K, but there's something there. If you're less conservative, you can just say, okay, this resistance has been tested before. I'm just going to take a position at support, which would be right now 2.7K or something, and then try to hold through that resistance into the breakout towards 4K. I would not want to be shorting another test of 3.3K. So I was heavily bearish into that like 3K test. We talked about this on the show a lot, where I was like, if you're holding your ETH beyond 3K, you're much more optimistic than I am. And then, I mean, we retested 3K, went even a little bit higher, and then just completely dumped, right? This time around, I'm not going to say the same thing again, because, I mean, if you get 3K again, I think there's a chance that we actually break it to the upside. The first time, in my mind, there was very, very little chance. Now it's significantly more. So yeah, I'm not like looking at this. It's not too bad. It's obviously not good given how this entire thing looks, but it's a consolidation instead of a full breakdown. And if we reclaim the box, I mean, it starts looking really good again. So yeah, 2.7K support. And then if we can smash through 3.3K, even the most conservative people should be flipping back. And I mean, it would obviously be bad if we do something like this and then round out and come back below 3K. But I mean, that's not what I would want to be betting on if we smash through 3.3K. So for me, right now, like if you want to have like a trade idea, 2.7K with like stops below the low, same kind of deal as Bitcoin, makes sense to me. It's just a question of, are you going to get it, or is it just going to run away from you? And I cannot answer that. I don't know yet.
I think that's the state of the market more generally, right? Like you look at Bitcoin, dumped off the highs, has kind of stopped dumping. There's a really key mid-range resistance level market structure, whatever you want to call it. For Bitcoin, it's low to mid 40s. For ETH, it's low to mid 3Ks. You get your bearish retest. The bearish retest doesn't lead to lower lows, and therefore you're much lower conviction reselling that same level, at least compared to the first time. So I think in general, you're either looking for stuff for the bottom to fall out on this type of stuff, and it gets so cheap that you can't afford not to buy it or to punt at the lows, or these bearish retests, by virtue of not being sufficiently bearish, kind of end up being bullish, right? And you get your first decent momentum signal that you've had in this market for a while, which would be Bitcoin smashing that low to mid 40s, ETH above 3K, and that's something you can chase, or at least, you know, makes sense to me personally. And then, as Don said, you've got, at least in that case, rather than just trading the chop under resistance, you have a clear invalidation in both scenarios, whereby if those mega important, allegedly, whatever, reclaimed levels don't turn to support, or you get a breakdown and you Hasaka bleed through them, or any scenario where that doesn't lead to strength, you at least know what that looks like and you bail. You know, as someone says in the chat, a legacy correlation is still on. Totally agree. But, you know, just in terms of high time frame market structure, which is a good way to cut through some noise, that seems to be applicable to both Bitcoin and ETH. Big retests, less compelling than before, probably get a lot of momentum follow through if it sticks.
Don, can I offend you by asking you to put this on the 4-hour chart? I know that's like micro time frame for you, but if you put it on the 4-hour and then you zoom out a little further, like, just keep going. Yeah, I like the way these start to create these kind of scoopy type trends. And ETH isn't quite as good as some, but there's a lot of coins right now that are creating this this kind of rounded bottom, progressive higher lows on low time frames that gives me some degree of confidence that the next move, assuming legacy doesn't wreck us, would be more sensible to go up. That's feeding into my overall bias, I guess. But I don't know if any of y'all are actually trading this low of a time frame.
I mean, look, as I said, for me, the stuff that makes me excited is either just like a breakout, which actually means something and doesn't fully retrace, or something at the lows, be it grindy or some sort of failed breakdown type of thing. You know, a lot of these levels have been tested 3, 4, 5 times, and that doesn't really tend to stay that way forever. And either way, thing is, even if you're bearish, you're still kind of waiting to do business at the same, if not similar level. That's the weird thing. Like, if you're a bull waiting for momentum, that low to mid 3K, low to mid 40K for BTC is definitely like a good spot where a breakout would actually mean something. But in the same vein, and the same vein for ETH, as I said, low to mid 3K. But even if you're bearish, right, and you're looking to fade a rip, it becomes really, you know, compelling to do so if you get that breakdown, which should be the green light and risk back on, etc., and it just peters out and does nothing. So it's one of those weird ones where, you know, the level is so straightforward and the market structure implications of those areas are so significant that whatever side of the aisle you're on, if you will, you're looking to do business more or less around those areas. Obviously, you know, the exception is if it just completely melts up and you fade way higher. But in terms of reclaim type of setups, there's a lot pointing in the same spot, at least for me.
Yeah, here's one. I don't have any Atom exposure right now, but I think it does a pretty good job of representing this kind of middle time frame compression that we see, where it seems obvious, to your point, Craig, like there's going to be volatility that ends up in a 20% move one way or the other, and then maybe it's crabbing again after that. But when we get these types of both ways and then compress again type of thing, it just makes me think that we're setting up for a much more real trend shift. And when you blend that with some of these that need this mean reversion or whatever to the upside or downside, whichever, like you can feel that volatility on the way. And the market's also pricing in, I think, some expectation of volatility, which usually works pretty well, right? Like if the options folks are starting to seek that. But anyway, I just thought I would pull that one up, but I'll give you control again, Don.
With regards to Atom, I actually like the Bitcoin pair. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with like the bearish retest. So far, like, yeah, still hasn't broken above that level.
Yeah.
But if it does, it starts to look really good, because like when you have a level that gets broken twice, like the chance that it's just gonna go above again and then fade out is just so slim. I think if anything, if you get another breakout and then it starts like walking up slowly, you get like a proper move to the upside. And this is the Bitcoin pair, of course. So yeah, if this actually moves a little bit, can actually look really, really good right now. It's not too exciting for me, but I could see this turn out into something good. It's just like 10% that it needs to go up and then show some strength the following week or two, and then it starts looking really good.
So do y'all want my reveal of my true mid-wittery?
Can you give us a hint? We can try to guess.
It's not my first rodeo, would be the hint.
Zcash.
Is it
Sushi?
CRX?
I like how y'all have all of my bad trades top of mind.
That was a bit too quick. Yeah, we probably should have thought a little bit longer about that.
No, it's not Zcash. It's actually the DeFi trade in general. I picked up a little bit of DeFi exposure, and I don't even think it's smart.
I said
but
sushi, right? That's
I didn't hear you say sushi. This chart I don't like, Don. But if you if you want, go look at Comp USD or Aave, something like that. But Comp is a good one because it represents kind of the Aave is a little less rekt. But this had a complete retrace of DeFi summer, and then started to hold some of those lows. But if you go over comp versus ETH, it gets really, really painful. And I almost this as like almost like a binary option. Like either that money just completely disappears, it's off the charts. You have to literally scroll it up so that it gets out of Cred's profile.
I am the support.
This is what is this?
Go to the left. So it's at 0. So I was just like, screw it, let's go. And I don't know what the narrative is, but there is some there is some stuff going on in DeFi land still. There's a lot of good builders. So I'm just assuming that in this scenario, you see that like Aave's already started doing a little bit of something. So that was it's not well thought out in terms of why I did this, but I did do this. So I just wanted to let you know that I picked up DeFi exposure. It's just because it's so rekt, and like these are still real things and real teams. And I know the narrative's like kind of this: if ETH moons, why bother holding anything else? But I feel like there's an opportunity for something to happen, and literally it could be almost nothing to create a double or a triple in these assets, and no one's still going to think about them yet. You know what I mean?
That's
hence
true.
the kind of binary option side of it, right? If they go,
Don feels sorry for you when he turns on log for one of your charts. When he's like about as sympathetic as this guy gets.
Listen, I told you it was going to be bad. I warned you.
You did.
But look at this. This is actually something that I drew like weeks and weeks ago. I think even on this show where I was like, okay, I mean, Aave like starts looking good if it closes above this resistance here. And this is why like I sometimes say, okay, if it closes above here, I mean, you can go, because fucking hell, if you didn't wait for it, bought into resistance, you lost 70% against Bitcoin from there. So yeah, oof.
Someone in the chat is like, this guy's thesis is that these projects are so rekt equals we ape, and someone else replies, yes.
I like it. I mean,
good.
You get them cheap now. Cheap is always relative, of course. Don't quote me on this.
Yeah.
But fucking hell.
Cheap compared to their all-time high, I guess.
So
I mean,
I think.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ledger.
We'll find out if I was like terribly wrong, or if my thesis is primarily that like just a blip of ETH excitement and like the old ETH DeFi doesn't really have to do much to do quite a lot in a return sense. These are small positions, small percentage positions, pretty binary in terms of like if they go down 50%, it's not like I'm like wrecked or something. You know what I mean? But if they 2 or 3x, then it ends up being a pretty decent win. So but yes, everybody in chat's right. Y'all are all right. That's what I did, and we'll find out how stupid I am. But I like that chart. That's like full market cycle cope, like and work its way into disbelief.
Yeah, this is like the kind of chart that goes like this.
Yeah, that's fine. That move you just made up is all I need.
Yeah, it actually wouldn't be a bad trade. That'd be up to 175, Don, if it follows the line. Wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, I mean, there is a trade to be taken. The trend's obvious. I think.
The trade's obvious.
But I mean, you can take the like mean reversion trade, I guess. This is the point where like the maximum corpus come out and draw a line here and then open up the RSI and to see, oh shit, the RSI is making higher
And if it's not the
lows.
RSI, you find some momentum oscillator to show you the divergence, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, oftentimes that actually works, bounce towards like the previous highs there, and then just completely shits the bed. So
I mean, that's plenty for Ledger, I think, on this trade. Jokes aside,
Yeah, so fingers crossed that actually works out for you.
Ledger, I actually do think that these projects probably like get an attention boost with ETH going into the merge. I am curious though, like long term, if this plays out, even good case scenario for ETH, not even the best case scenario, but ETH fundamentals and the incentives to hold it continue to grow. It's like that's tough for DeFi projects. Like I think the case to hold DeFi projects long term gets even worse as the case to hold ETH gets even better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a temporary thing. Like, because I agree with the case of like ETH being deflationary and kind of the hardest asset. This is a classic anti-deflationist argument, right? Like it disincentivizes productivity versus what is this Keynesian thought processes? Cred, is that right?
I mean, Keynesian is how you'd pronounce it, but that tends to be
Keynesian.
A complete misnomer in general. Thing is, if you invoke Keynes on crypto Twitter, it's just like if you're an American libertarian who doesn't like the government and also doesn't like to think, you can just say the word Keynes and everyone naturally thinks you just like completely owned the commies. It's very intellectually lazy. But yes, please go ahead.
I didn't even want to. But this, the American central government has this goal of like maintaining some relatively small amount of inflation for all these purposes of encouraging productivity while also maintaining some degree of like strong currency that can be used in commerce. But in the ecosystem where you just hold your pet rocks and you don't need to do anything and number go up, it disincentivizes these DeFi activities or things where you have a hard time understanding how those assets can do well against the underlying asset.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's a tension that you get quite often in crypto in general when it comes to using stuff, especially if it has a strong speculative element. Like, it's like the Bitcoin pizza all over again, right? It's like, why would I use this stuff if not using it, especially when it comes to payments, right? Or just like as a currency. Why would I use it now if I could use it in whatever period of time to buy 10 times as much stuff? And it just seems like we always hit that sort of tension point in crypto. And like I saw someone when I think it was Kyle Davies talking about using, I think maybe it was Kyle or Sam, whatever, people talking about using tokenized Bitcoin or like using it on Luna and so on and so forth. It's like, I don't know, man, if it's like a deflationary thing that generally goes up a lot, I don't want to be Bitcoin pizza guy 10 years, 15 years later,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I can be devil's advocate real quick and say that like most of this stuff is just going to be replaced by something that does the exact same thing, just better down the road. So if you hold any of these, especially like, I mean, in DeFi, in crypto, doesn't really matter. If you hold any of these too long, you're probably going to be stuck with the bag, in my opinion anyway. Because like at the end of the day, like it's all open source, right? You can just take the thing, work on it, re-release it without the bag holders, basically. Incentivize users by using the funds that you just got by launching the project, and then you have a new thing that is better, that has better price action, that goes up easier, and you can do that over and over and over again, which makes holding any of these like projects really, really tough, in my opinion.
The optimist in me wants to believe that these moats will be harder to capture. Or harder to bridge, I guess, in the future, and that the network effects will have a chance to dig in a little bit better, and that Aave will be like the DeFi bank that you trust, or whatever. Pick your poison, right? And that like Aave, fork number 37, Don's bag is not going to be the one someone's going to trust. And I think but the thing is, should should
you go
play a
ahead,
role
sorry.
from a security perspective long term. Like, why would I use like the 37th version of an exchange? Exchange software can just be repeated over and over again. But that's not true. We trust FTX, right, to put our funds on. And FTX did some displacement of their own of centralized exchanges, but at some point, I feel like they start to take hold with a sense of network effects, security, trust, and maybe that moat gets a little wider.
Yeah, the counter argument that I would use is legitimately how we've seen people rotate from incentive to incentive during like the last 2 years, where you just saw like numbers of protocols just go completely apeshit when they had like incentives going, because smart traders and smart people in general were just abusing it. And then once the incentives ran dry, they were all just abandoned and forgotten about. And the next big thing that had like an incentive going just got used. But that could just be me, like the pessimist in me. I don't know. But that's kind of like how I felt when I saw all of that, where people just rotated from one thing to the next. It's kind of like crypto thing where you're not really very loyal to like a protocol or something. It's just, you just move on. And that's been the good trade. But yeah, hopefully that changes at some point so people can actually invest properly.
Yeah, I just think it'll be other factors, right? But there'll always be some of that. But I think other factors, safety, security, team, the ability to build, some of those things might enable these to establish a moat. But nevertheless, should we do what we're looking for next week? Anybody?
Yeah, sure. For me, essentially, well, first of all, I don't see this thing fully retrace, right? We've had stronger moves, which just retrace the next day or two later.
I would like to see a number continue to go up.
Yes, I would like to see green candles. So that would be cool. But yeah, for me, like the market's very close to, I know this is typical TA cringe, but like a decision point that actually means something for once. This low to mid 3K on ETH, low to mid 40K on Bitcoin. I just think a lot of capital and a lot of trading systems really get activated through and into those areas. I want to see how that pans out. And I think we've got some legacy stuff on the calendar for that as well. And I still haven't seen enough evidence to convince me of like a proper decoupling, but that doesn't mean we can't have our own kind of juicy move in crypto. So TLDR, big line make Boeing levels coming up. Pay attention, eye emoji.
All right, we're going to need Dynasty to remember everything that sentence just said for the title of the show. Something about Boeing emojis.
Yes.
Don, what are you on the lookout for?
I mean, for
another
me,
holiday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be on a holiday, so
just so we're clear, if the market does print a failed breakout, it's entirely because of Don's holiday schedule, where he actually cut his holiday early, came back to his desk, and then didn't last a day and decided to go on another holiday somewhere else completely. If the market just like rug retraces, you know exactly who to blame. And just DM me, I'll send you his address. No, I won't, but you know what
I mean, I one of the holidays was surfing, the next one is snowboarding. That's like 180. That's like going from the hot to the cold. I feel like that's justified. But no, like I mean, it's just the market is just pretty fucking boring right now. But that is always the case before it actually does something big, right? It gets really fucking boring and then it does something massive. I kind of agree with Cred that we're getting close. Wow. I think there's like a week, maybe two, that we could still hang around this level before we actually come to the decision point, just based on, one, this stupid descending triangle doesn't leave much more room. And two, this consolidation has gone on for so long that all of the horizontal levels as well are completely washed out, right? So either we pump and then, I mean, if you're really, really cynical, we just lose the pump again and then just go sideways, and that'd be fine. We can go for another month or 2 or 3 at that point. Or do the same, like the opposite thing where we dump and then come back. Like that's the cynical take, right? Which I think is fine, but you need that to happen relatively soonish. Just based on the fact that I don't think this market can continue just doing nothing.
Don's like, I'm running out of lines, horizontal, diagonal. I'm out of space.
Everything. So now I think we are going to get a move. I'm not entirely sure if the next move we're gonna get is gonna be like a trend defining one. Like even if we go to 50K, I could see it just come back to 40K. And even if we go sub 30K, I could see it just come back to 40K again. But I think we're gonna have a move soon. So I'm looking forward from now till next week for the 40K level to hold. If that holds this entire week, I think there's a good chance that we actually head up next one. I'll be back on the weekend, so I might actually position myself at that point if we show strength until then. If I come back and we're already chilling at 50K, I mean, there's just fuck all for me to do. So would be nice if it just keeps on crabbing. But for me, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like 40K level is super important. Altcoin wise, there's nothing for me to do, in my opinion. Like I don't want to stick my hands into any of that. They all, or like most of them, 95% look like altcoins did in the first part, or like the first part of the bear market of 2018. And there was like another 80% down on most of those to come afterwards.
Ledger, I am long altcoins. Done at the end of the show. It is over. January 2018. The first half of the bear market. Ledger's like, get me off this fucking show.
Saying I'm long altcoins is not entirely fair, Cred. I am mostly long Bitcoin, but I'm generally optimistic that we could start to climb some sort of wall of worry or whatever you want to call it. Like I can actually imagine
you nibbled.
Yeah, I nibbled altcoins. You got to nibble and remember the pain as they dump and go against you and you lose money. I got my eyes on that 50K level, your red box where we last tapped it before we really capitulated, Don. I think we can crab northward is also a little bit of pain, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's when people are going to get really excited about the market. And then to your point, I think the natural thing from there is go back down to like the 42, 40 area, which would be quite painful for most. And then, I'm going to be bullish to 50K and then probably risk off. And then I'll start getting bullish at 40K again. And I'm anticipating our market to be very bearish and say it's all over at that point. I think fading sentiment during all of these like crab seasons is generally not the worst idea in the world. And people right now I feel like are quite risk off. Like people are pretty scarred, even though Bitcoin's not completely wrecked. A lot of stuff really is, to the point of those altcoin charts that we looked at, and people were heavily overexposed to altcoins for the entire year. So I would not. I have hopium that it will go up there and blast through that descending triangle over the next couple of weeks and have a run at 50K.
I like that. I like the sound of that. I'm looking more at ETH, man. I don't know. The Bitcoin chart just isn't that exciting to me. That crab, I can't look at it anymore. I think this is the first week that we're coming off of a constructive setup, not only in ETH USD, but also on ETH Bitcoin. Like if you look at any other pop that ETH has had, it's always been on one of those pairs. And for the first time, it's doing them on both. So I don't, CMS tweeted the other day, it's like, are we all making this too complicated? Let's just buy the ETH merge narrative and, kind of forget about it for a couple months. And maybe he's right. Like the ETH beat Bitcoin chart isn't pretty, but it's moving up quite nicely if you look at daily and anything in that time frame. So I kind of like ETH more than Bitcoin if you are slightly bullish. But I don't know. That's probably the only reason I'd be optimistic this week is I think that's one of the few narratives that you can cling to that sucks away liquidity from other things that were more. You had to take more risk to get the same upside. I think ETH starts to benefit now from having kind of increased focus and attention going to the merge.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. I got a brunch to go eat. So it's been a pleasure to be with each of you. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Don't forget to go to weeklyopen.com/FTX to check out our partners over at FTX and download the mobile app where you can trade all the assets that they have available in your jurisdiction. Follow your portfolio as you've always known and loved. Also, Tom, if you want to check out old shows, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit buttons for liking and all those things. Thanks so much for being a part, and we'll catch you next time. See you guys.